Okay, so our next speaker that we have under finance and investments is Mutomboi.
Great, thank you so much. Mutomboi is Director, Market Supervision and Development at the Securities and Exchange Commission in Zambia. She has over 20 years combined experience in financial markets, regulation, crisis management, business support, advisory services, mainstream finance, the list goes on. She worked previously as Associate Director, Practice Advisory and Practice at PricewaterhouseCoopers in Zambia. And she will speak about the stock market today. She's also going to talk about the power of togetherness. And I hope that she can just say a little bit about the importance of having your books in the right place as an entrepreneur and getting your corporate governance right. Because I think those are very practical things that entrepreneurs need to get in place for their businesses to grow or raise an income. Mutomboi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sombo. And I want to greet everybody that's joined us for this very important conference. And for starters, I also want to just really thank the Anakazi team for this very thoughtful and timely conference. I'll go straight into my presentation, and I've been requested to speak to the participants this evening back here, morning, wherever you are. And whatever time of the day, I've been requested to talk about stocks and bonds. And I added, obviously, in line with the theme that we are discussing these issues in light of the coronavirus. For a start, I actually wanted to give a quote from John F. Kennedy, our former US president, who wrote, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. And I think I really got inspired with every speaker that's come before me. Eureka spoke about her own experience with COVID. I was in the hospital yesterday for a procedure that didn't quite take place, but I was in the hospital the whole day and I feel very exposed with what I saw. But so it was very, very encouraging to hear Eureka's approach to COVID. And so it's official. Markets have declined. It's official. We are in recession. The US was on CNN last night, and I watched that as they're going through their numbers and how they've downsized. Zambia itself is predicting minus growth. Our stock markets here is usually an illiquid market. It's a very small market, but very surprising with COVID. It's not taking no excuse, and the markets have been able to read that negative impact that's come from COVID. And we have declined in size as a market by about 8% since April. So it's overwhelming. And there's a lot of news, there's a lot of information that's that's available for us, and a lot of discussions in terms of the impact. And as previously highlighted by earlier speakers, we're all having to do various analyses at a personal level, in terms of the corporates that we work for or the businesses that we run. At national level, we're having to reanalyze, reposition ourselves in terms of revising our budgets. And then coming back to stocks and bonds, there's a lot of information out there, and there's various pieces of advice. This is the best time for you to buy stocks because the markets have dropped, and so you can get them so cheaply. Try and target, you get all sorts of advice. Try and target companies whose fundamentals are still very strong. I'm not sure how you do that. And then you also have other pieces of information which say maybe just hold on to your money. It's not a very good time to do any shopping, just hold on to your money. So I'm not intending to give any investment advice, but basically to say that I personally have taken a safeguard, and my safeguard is to listen, knowing that nobody has experienced the sort of crisis that we're experiencing, and therefore nobody really has firsthand in terms of the situation that we're dealing with. But again, it's official. and we do have a crisis at hand. I wanted to speak to you about my experience in crisis management. I'd worked in a crisis management team during my days with PricewaterhouseCoopers. And we actually did our job very well. We were branded in the market to be called undertakers. And that's because the banks would recruit us to undertake recovery jobs for companies in distress. And we were extremely passionate about it. We registered successes for the banks that had engaged us. So I learned a few useful lessons about crises. And I was actually hoping that we'll be able to beam the presentation, but I know it got in a little bit late. I don't see it being beamed, but I can just speak to that presentation that I was hoping that you can be referring to at this moment. So 3 lessons that I picked from my experience as a crisis manager. 1, no one is certain on the direction to take during a crisis. There's nobody who can be that confident and bold that the direction that they're deciding at this point is the correct direction. So just bear that in mind. 2, I learned also that decisions have to be made, whether right or wrong. These decisions need to be made. Then I learned as a crisis manager that action is a paramount thing. And you just do not give up. Yes, it's a fight. And under the circumstances, the situation that we're dealing with, the COVID, it's a fight for survival in the very sense of the word. I mean, you're actually even having to fight for your very own life. And I think for the 3 learning lessons that I've shared with you, the key ingredient that I discovered as a crisis manager was having clarity of mind. And in having clarity of mind, you need to come to a disposition where you understand that certain principles will remain as such. And at this point, I want us to come to the subject matter, which is stocks and bonds. The principles behind stocks and bonds will remain as such. And maybe just to give a broad definition, stocks and bonds are financial instruments that are dealt with by businesses and that businesses can use for them to raise long-term capital. And they remain instruments, financial instruments that can be used to raise long-term capital, whether you're in a crisis or you're not in a crisis. And I thought that maybe it would be useful just to break it down in case there's a few people that are participating in the conference that are not very familiar with the differences between the two. With stocks, the capital supplier, the person that is providing capital to the business, takes stake in the business. And so they share in the gains and the losses of the business. So they share in the risks and the rewards of the business. With bonds are a debt security. So the supplier of a bond is basically giving a loan to the business based on agreed specific terms. They do not take stake. So they're not equity partners in that sense. And the expectation really is that you will service this loan in accordance with the agreed terms and the repayment plans. That's your 2 differences. And in trying to appreciate how important or useful some of these financial instruments are for your businesses, I want us to look at 2 perspectives or 2 individuals. A businesswoman that is looking for capital in these hard times, and there are so many businesses. I think the previous speakers have spoken about the different ventures that they're involved in. I'm involved in business myself. My friends, my sisters do businesses, and we've all been hit and look into how we survive. One of the things that we are all talking about is the need to get capital to assist us with the various things that the business needs, including not necessarily expansion as in the normal sense of it, but just survival for now. So I want to address it from that woman who's looking for capital And then I also want to address my subject matter today from the woman that has a little bit of excess, has been able to make savings, and is looking for investment destinations of where to take this money. And I hear there was a question to the previous speaker, Nathan, of somebody wanting to know what viable investment options are available in Zambia. So to the woman that is looking for capital, my advice is that you need to have clarity, and we're going back to the key ingredient, and the key ingredient remains clarity of thought. And clarity of thought in what sense? Oh, I can see the presentation has been put up, so you can probably go right to the next slide. We're past that slide. We're almost done, actually. We're done. The next slide. We can leave it there. Sorry, the previous slide. The one that shows you the two sides, in fact, that I'll be speaking to. The one that's got that one. And basically what that picture is trying to depict are these two perspectives of the individuals that I was speaking to. So you've got the individuals, the individual that's looking for capital, which is like the business, and you've got the individual that's looking for an investment opportunity, which is the investor. And so for the businesses, for the women that are running businesses, that clarity is very important. You need clarity in terms of your business strategy. You need clarity in terms of your current performance and where you see the business going. And it doesn't matter that there's a crisis. The crisis that we're facing is being faced by everybody else. We're all working with scenarios. Do your scenarios, your best case scenario, your worst case scenario, and your most likely scenario. Then think about the type of funding that you're looking for at a time such as this. I gave a very broad distinction between stocks and shares and bonds, sorry. And so think about what would make sense. Are you able, is your business able to sustain debt, for example? Is it able to meet the regular obligations? I think I lost you a little bit there. Once you have decided which of the two instruments, for example, is suitable to you, you now need to ask yourself, where do I go to look for these partners? And we do have markets that are called the capital markets, where the financial instruments are traded, and where you as a small business, or indeed as a large business, can come to these platforms and access capital. The platforms we talk about are the stock markets, and most of us, or a number of us, are familiar with the operators of the stock markets. If you're in Zambia, we are talking about the Lusaka Securities Exchange PLC. If you're in London, it's the London stock market, and the various stock markets in your different jurisdictions. Now, these platforms have rules, and the underlying rule for participating on these markets is transparency. Sombo mentioned that I speak to the issue of having your books in order. You need to have your books in order for people to be able to understand where you're at, where you're going, and for them to align with what you're promising. So the capital markets, stock exchanges, will thrive on transparency. They will thrive on disclosure. So as a business person, and I want to address this to business people in my country, we tend sometimes to be very closed and not wanting for us to open, especially for equity, for various reasons. But I think the times that we're in, COVID, is a time that needs us to change our minds and to think about strategy in a different way. Because 100% of a business that's going down is not better than 25% of a business that's rescued by you opening up and allowing other people to bring capital and you issuing them with stock. And that's exactly what we're trying to depict on this platform, that you can change your mind, you can acclimatize, and be ready, be brave enough to bring your proposals, to bring your businesses to these public markets so that you can access long-term capital according to what you find suitable, whether that would be in shares or whether that would be in bonds. There are other platforms that have emanated in the world of finance over the last few years, and some of you might have used some of those platforms, crowdfunding, for example. Those are brilliant opportunities for you to take your ideas. So in Zambia, we do not yet have legislation around crowdfunding, and where I work, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission, we're just beginning to put in place a framework which will facilitate for these platforms to come on board. And the difference with your traditional stock exchange is that they're more flexible because they're not rigid in terms of the regulations, and then you can design this platform to service the target audience that you want. So if you want the crowdfunding platform to target small and medium businesses by women, you can make the rules in such a way that it facilitates that. But remember, in these public platforms, transparency, disclosure, governance. So be ready to move along that line. The second perspective of the person that I wanted us to have in mind is the one with the extra money. And again, you will also need to do certain things. I heard in the previous speaker, she highlighted the issue of upskilling your skills, upskilling your skills, and getting new skill sets. It's very important. Whilst you can get advisors to point you to investment options, it's also very important that you leverage the times of COVID. And one of the things that I've personally seen during this time is that there's so many online programs. You can get an online program that teaches you about these instruments like stocks and bonds as an investment option, and then you'll be able to do your own analysis of really whether it makes sense for you to enter these markets as an investor at this point in time, as some of the advice out there. So really, I thought that I try and encourage the businesses that are represented in this conference today that, you know, you need to be bold and not fear coming to the public markets. You need to do a bit of homework to study and research which platforms are available. There are some platforms which are regulated, there are some platforms which are not regulated, and there's pros and cons between participating on an unregulated platform and participating on a regulated platform. So in summary, I would say coronavirus is a horrible pandemic, quite all right, but with every crisis, there are opportunities that have presented. So for one, don't be defeated by the news and the oversupply of information that we are getting. Then control your mind and your thoughts. Draw down clear plans. I say clarity is a key ingredient to surviving in this time. So draw down those clear strategies and plans. Communicate yourself very well in terms of what you see your business doing in future. Be convincing, and I think the keynote speaker really touched on these issues very well. And finally, learn new skills. Whether you are on this side of the platform or on that side of on the left or on the right side of the platform, you need to learn new skills and consult. Consult is something that we used to say back in practice. But remember, no one has definite answers, because the current crisis that we are faced with is a crisis that none of us has ever had to deal with. And in ending, I really wanted to end with another quote, which comes from Steve Covey. And the quote is simply, if you don't choose to do it in leadership time up front, you do it in crisis management time down the road. So it's not too late to take a U-turn and pursue the vision as you see it fit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mutomboi, for a very insightful presentation today. So I'm looking at the questions that we have in the chat, and there is one that says, "How can diaspora invest in Zambian stock market?"
Okay. So in Zambia, we have one active stock exchange, which is called the Lusaka Securities Exchange PLC, and you can Google it and get to their website. With the stock markets, you participate by going through one of the members of those platforms. Remember, I said that these markets are very regulated. And in Zambia, you need to get access to a registered broker. And again, when you go on the LUSE website, you will find the names of the brokers that you can contact, and they will handhold you. They'll give you all the requirements, and they'll actually also give you the advice on perhaps what would be a suitable share to counter to invest in. So it's very easy, and our markets are very open.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today and for sharing the knowledge that you have with us. We look forward to engaging with you in our future virtual conferences, because we can see that you have lots of knowledge that needs to be shared with people so they can be successful in their businesses and in their investments. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Sambo, and thank you to the participants. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.